Welcome. Good afternoon to Moneyline MMA. Coming back after eventful, successful, awesome UFC 309 card. Of course, John Jones retaining his heavyweight belt against Stipe. Charles Oliveira being successful against Michael Chandler. Bo Nickel not landing a takedown but winning against Paul Craig. Marcin Tybura doing exactly what I predicted. And Karine Silva. Couldn't be a more perfect card from the top down. Jose and I absolutely dominated our picks. Um, Jose's five weight smacked, my five weight smacked, and even going into the underdog picks, Tybura, great pick, ends up finishing Jonata Denise via bloody face, ground and pound, take some elbows, buddy. And that's kind of what I mentioned on the show. He is a sitting duck on his back, and the matchup just was not there for Jonata Denise. I do believe he has UFC talent. He isn't like just a fish out of the water, but against a guy as good as Tybura at wrestling, yeah, good luck, buddy. That was a really good performance there for the old vet. And like I mentioned, Bo Nickel, a lot of the crowd disappointed. I'm at home excited. We see Bo Nickel stand and bang with Paul Craig. Of course, not a huge boxer, but that's a very tenured UFC veteran to have a unanimous decision win against while standing up the whole time. Michael Chandler, how fun was the end of that fight when he stood up and just jumped back on Charles Oliveira twice? Oh man, I love America, man. That's just American spirit and grit right there. Get up, smash him. Get up, smash him. And if he had extra time, he would have done it again. But in all reality, that's not the kind of stuff that gets you wins in the cage. Charles Oliveira was even like laughing and smiling about it. I'm sure it didn't feel great, but at the same time, he wasn't going to be like breaking a rib or anything. Speaking of breaking a rib, though, John Jones breaking Stipe's rib with a spinning like roundhouse kick, using his heel, just jabbing it into Stipe's rib cage. That was impressive placement, and even a guy as tough as Stipe couldn't last after that. So it does seem the biggest news coming out of all that, Jose, is it does seem like we may be getting a John Jones Aspinall fight. He kind of seemed to be denying it all throughout the media week, and it seemed like based on his post fight speech and post fight interview that he just wanted a bag. He was just trying to set it up to get a bag. So UFC ought to pay up and get us John Jones versus Aspinall. Maybe sometime June, July of next year. That would be really exciting. That'd be super exciting. So hopefully that happens. Jose, before we move on, any final thoughts on UFC 309?
I was gonna say, yeah, John Jones had a great performance, and I was gonna say that I feel like for some reason, I feel like we still shouldn't leave Alex Pereira out of the conversation because I also would not be surprised. Like John Jones was like he did like not want to talk a lot about the Aspinall stuff, and I could still see him leading it on, and we just get like like a complete like 180, and it goes like it's Alex Pereira that comes up because I think John Jones would definitely do better against Alex Pereira than Aspinall because Aspinall will definitely offer I think more. He's naturally going to be the bigger guy and just off. He's really fast and gonna wrestle a lot more than what I think Alex Pereira would. So I don't know. Like I do think I would love to see the Aspinall fight. And I think that's what the fans want. But I honestly think like the Alex Pereira fight actually could still be a realistic option as well.
It would be crazy too, because they're both like I want to say similar ages. They're both in their upper 30s, about to be 38, 39. Um, I would be surprised. I think that's totally a possibility, but I would be surprised just because Dana seems to be very, it's my way or the highway. And Dana did kind of make it clear, like, you can have Pereira just after Aspinall. So we'll see. We'll
Okay.
see.
I didn't hear him that part where he can get Pereira after Aspinall. So I mean I definitely see that then being the case. And then beating Aspinall and then Pereira just moves up to heavyweight and then it's just a great legacy story for both.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it was at the press conference on Friday night before the fight. One of the media members had asked Dana White. He brought up all the controversy between Aspinall and Jones, and he asked Dana White if he would, like, I forget how he worded it, but Dana White's response was, you know, it was just in regards to Pereira as well, and Dana White was like, "Yeah, it would make most sense." Oh, this is how it was. The media member was like, "Does it make sense for the winner of this fight to fight Aspinall?" And Dana White said, "Yes, the winner of this fight will fight Aspinall." That's what Dana White said, and then I think the follow up question was something about Alex Pereira, and Dana White was like, "Yeah, he can have Pereira after Aspinall." So I don't know if
And
that's like a direct quote, but it's close enough.
I will say I've noticed that the way they talk is always like you said, like he can have Pura after Aspinall, assuming that he wins, and then that's how they were talking about it. Like after Stipe, like John Jones is gonna get Aspinall after Stipe, like like
Right?
so that's the way. Like when you think like you just hearing it, it's like he's almost anticipating like, yo, John Jones has this, like he's got this,
It is
which is kind of
interesting.
funny.
It goes to show, man. That's why we believe here at Moneyline MMA that UFC definitely writes storylines with the fights that it creates, and they know who they're matching up. They don't just throw darts at the board and see what happens. They are very well aware of these fighters' strengths and weaknesses and what they would be good or bad against when they send these contracts to fight people. And I think that's part of the reason that it's such an exciting thought is because the idea is that Aspinall would be too fast to be able to get wrestled solidly. He would be able to scramble too easily against John Jones. And I continue to see this narrative on Twitter that people think that even on the feet that he would outbox John Jones because he's faster. And I don't. I think it's a cope for a lot of people that just want to think that someone else in the division can compete with Jones. And of course, like guys can compete with John Jones, but I'm saying like Tom Aspinall is not just going to go in there and dice him up on the feet because they'll use an example of like when he fought Curtis Blades, and he's doing a lot of dancing around and he's moving this and that, but it was like, what do you mean like he didn't not like in that moment, like it looked easy for him against for Curtis Blades against him. Curtis Blades was landing jabs, doing this and that, and it was only when Curtis Blades messed up later in the fight that he got beat. Like John Jones isn't making those mistakes. I don't know. I don't want to get on a whole tirade about it, but it's like they use these examples of fighters that are like 1/3 of the fighter that John Jones is, and it's like, so like what do you think it's gonna be like? So I guess now Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades are the same as John Jones. They're just like the same. No one's really better than them. Like according to these people on Twitter, at least.
Oh yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like, yeah, I mean, there's like I can't even think much of who else there is besides. I can see John Jones just retiring, just get these two over with, and then no one else left for him. But I think to retire, I think just and those are I think would be big money fights.
Retire, and then in 5-10 years he'll do a boxing match with Francis.
Jake Paul. Oh, I was gonna say with
Francis.
Jake Paul,
No,
with
they'll
Francis
they'll
would be
do the
cool.
whole thing because it was like one of the fights that people wanted in MMA, and they'll be like, it'll be a marketing and promotion thing where it's like you never got to see it in MMA, but you'll see it here. They'll have 6-inch pads on their fists, and they'll be trying half as hard as they really could. They didn't even train that hard for it. Yeah,
Right? Yeah. No,
AKA the
I can
Jake
definitely
Paul
say
fight.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a boxing show, but boxing is a joke. That's why we don't talk about it here. Um, and yeah, I'm sure anyone who is a boxing fan hears that and immediately closes the window, and that's completely fine with me because boxing is a joke, in my opinion. If you want to watch boxing, then we can watch some of the fights that we're going to see on this Saturday because there are plenty of UFC fighters that don't go for takedowns and that are a zero submission threat, and we have a chance to see some of that on this Saturday. Before we get too far into things, let's just remind everybody that we have a 5-weight pick system here at Moneyline MMA in which we take 5 of the currently 13 scheduled fights for UFC Macau, and we order them in order of weight confidence, with 5-weight being the heaviest, therefore most confident pick, and 1-weight being the least confident. These fights are in UFC Macau. Of course, that's in Southeast China, I believe, in which case it's pretty much on the exact opposite side of the planet. And AKA, what I'm getting at is 2 a.m. Central Time with the prelims and 5 a.m. Central Time for the main card to begin. So just keep that in mind. If you're making any bets on these fights and you want to watch, you're going to have to be up pretty late here in the U.S. side of things. On the Eastern, you'll probably want to get up if you're on the Eastern time zone. Get up at 6 a.m. If you're on the West Coast, good luck. That's going to be 3 a.m. You might as well just stay up late at that point. But either way, Yeah, very odd time. It's been a few years since the UFC's gone to Macau, and I think this is a decent part of the reason for it. But in any case, there's a couple former champs on this card. I think it's a little top heavy in terms of having good fighters on it, but that's partially because there's tournament championship fights happening in the prelims and a couple of other Chinese fighters that they wanted to include on this card, which is totally reasonable. So that being said, we're going to start as always with our locks of the week, aka our 5-weight picks of Saturday afternoon. And I will say, just to preface these picks, is these just a little less confident than the 5-weight that I had last week. John Jones was my 5-weight, Bo Nickel was my 4-weight, and Tybura was my 3-weight. I'm more confident in my last week 3-weight than I am my this week 5-weight, to be quite honest. But in any case, we're going to press on and we're going to continue getting winning picks out there. My 5-weight is going to be the opener of the main card at this time, which is scheduled to be Zhang Minyang versus Ozzy Diaz. This is a fight between two light heavyweights in which Ozzy Diaz, this is technically his UFC debut. He got a contract still after losing his Dana White Contender Series fight, getting finished by Joe Pyfer. He's a large, I would say at least he's larger for the division. Of course, it's light heavyweight, so you're going to get big bodies. But 6'4" with a 79-inch reach is Ozzy Diaz. And he's fighting Zhang Minyang, who's currently 2-0 in the UFC. He got his contract from the road to UFC back in 2022. He took a break, came back earlier this year in February, and finished Bredson Ribeiro in the first round. He's also a little, like I said, he's a little smaller, but of course still a big body at 6'2", 75-inch reach. And Zhang Minyang is the minus 330 favorite here. So just over 3-1 favorite. Ozzy Diaz plus 240. And I'm taking as my 5-weight the favorite here, Ozzy Diaz. I'm taking a guy that I've seen get it done in the UFC. And I believe I said Ozzy Diaz, but that was a mistake on my end. The favorite is Zhang Minyang, and he is my pick. So if I said Ozzy Diaz, that was incorrect. My pick is on Zhang Minyang. He's the one who has UFC experience, having a couple of wins in the UFC, and nonetheless, first-round finishes in the UFC, which I really like to see. He's got 11 KO finishes already under his belt, and Ozzy Diaz does have 7, but Ozzy Diaz has been more recently finished by Joe Pyfer. And don't get me wrong, Joe Pyfer has turned out to be pretty solid as of late. He's gotten a couple of good wins put together. He did lose to Jack Hermanson, but beat Marc-Andre Barriault. And, Marc-Andre's decent. He also beat GM3, but of course it was on the feet. GM3 is a submission threat. So, I'm still kind of up in the air, right, on how good Joe Pyfer is. And Ozzy Diaz got starched by him in the Contender Series. So this is for me just a pick on a guy that I really believe should be able to get it done by either KO or decision. And Zhang Minyang, he's definitely the more dangerous guy here, if you ask me. And he might not have size, but in all reality, a couple of inches of height and reach at a weight class that's already dealing with big bodies at light heavyweight, I don't think is as significant. So give me Zhang Minyang as my 5-weight. And that'll be by, honestly, I might have to say inside the distance in general. Zhang Minyang has not gotten a decision win in his entire career. Zhang Minyang either finishes his opponent or loses. So I'm going to say that does continue at the beginning stages of his UFC career here. He's still, like I said, only 2 fights in at the UFC. So I'm thinking that until he gets a couple of fights under his belt to get heavier competition coming, he's going to continue that early finish streak of his. So take Zhang Minyang this weekend by KO or submission. Any thoughts, Jose?
Yeah, so for this one, I'm going to agree with you. I have Zhang Mingyang as well. He is my 1-weight because I just have not seen both him and Osman Diaz enough of them, and in just because all his fights, like majority of Zhang Mingyang's fights, do end in the first round. Like majority of them have ended in the first round. So I want to see how he really does against a UFC caliber fighter, making it past the first round. And just because I've never really, again, I haven't seen much of him. I think this is like a good fight for me to really observe and get a good idea of him. But that being said, he does have a history of winning, being a finisher. I totally agree with you. I do not think this fight's going to go to decision. Both fighters are finishers. Diaz has 7 KO/TKOs out of his 9 wins. But Ming Yang, he has 11 KO/TKOs out of his 17 wins, and Zhang is younger. He's 26 versus Diaz, who's 33. But Zhang seems like he has a lot more experience in fighting than Osman. But Osman again he also is quite of a finisher himself. A lot of him, he has a good first and second rounders, but Ming Yang just been finishing people a lot faster. So I'm curious to see how he looks like if he can't finish Ozzy in the first round. But that being said, yeah, I'm going with Zhang Ming Yang, but he is my one weight.
Sounds good, man. So we will agree then on likely an eventful fight here, and I totally agree that there's a little apprehension that might be necessary on both of these guys' sides when you look at it. So just keep that in mind when betting. If anything, the most guaranteed bet I can put out there for this fight would just be under 1.5 on in general. To be honest, I think just because both of these guys, even if you look at Ozzy Diaz, the longest he's gone in a fight in his professional career is um, to the end of the first round or second round. Sorry, with a couple of seconds left in the second round, he landed a flying knee in LFA. He has never seen the third round in his entire professional fighting career. That is all fights combined, win or loss. And honestly, the same can be said for Zhang Mingyang. As you said, he's a one-on-one finisher. He had one fight go three, so about a minute was left in the second round. That's the furthest that he's been in a fight. So I would continue. I would expect that to continue. Give me under on this fight, even if you're not too strong on either side. But Jose and I do both have Minyang Zhang as our pick here for 6 combined confidence points. And with that, we'll move to Jose's 5 weight.
Yes. So sorry, I got like a pop up right here. So for my 5 weight, this is going to be the light heavyweight bout between Volkan Ozdemir and Carlos Ulberg. Right now, Volkan Ozdemir, he is the betting underdog at plus 210, while Carlos Ulberg is a big betting favorite at minus 280. This one I'm going with Ulberg. The reason is that dude's just been on a tear right now. He has a lot of first round finishes as well. Similar to Zhang Mingyang. And most recently, Carlos Ulberg has a first round finish against Alonzo Menifield earlier this year in May. While Volkan Ozdemir, he's been up and down. He's on he's won 2 in a row right now. He's including Johnny Walker, but knocking Johnny Walker in the first round, like Ulberg will easily do the same thing to Johnny Walker, and so could a good amount of like UFC fighters. And then he beat Guskov earlier about a year ago and submitted him. So Volkan Ozdemir is like he's just been kind of hit or miss. He's losing to like the really top dudes, but so this kind of really does tell me that they're really challenging Carlos Ulberg in this one to see where he falls in this division because if he can get past Volkan Ozdemir, they're gonna start pushing him up. Volkan Ozdemir, like this is one where he either needs to win, or else like they're just gonna keep feeding him and using him as a gatekeeper to say. And he needs like again Volkan Ozdemir. He's a former title challenger. But that being said, I think Carlos Ulberg is going to get this one in the bag. I just think it's also like how they match up physically. Ulberg is going to be the bigger guy. He's 6'4", Volkan Ozdemir 6'2", and Carlos Ulberg does have a 2-inch reach advantage. And Carlos Ulberg too, he has a high. Volkan Ozdemir is a good kickboxer, but Carlos Ulberg too, he's a really good boxer in general. Like he has a high striking rate. He thus right now in the UFC, he has a 7.41. He lands 7.41 significant strikes per minute, and he absorbs only 3.6. Whereas Volkan Ozdemir lands 4.79, and he absorbs quite a bit at 3.96. So I think Carlos Ulberg, with his longer reach, will be able to clip up Volkan Ozdemir and stun him. And ultimately, if he doesn't finish him, yeah, I just see it being unanimous for Ulberg. Out of his 10 wins, Ulberg has 7 via KO/TKO. So I think this one, like, if he's not knocking him out, he's just going to be unanimous. He does have just one submission on his record, but Volkan Ozdemir, he's only been submitted twice. But he hasn't been submitted in a minute since 2018 from Anthony Smith. So that being said, like I don't know if Ulberg will submit Volkan Ozdemir, but I definitely am confident that Ulberg will finish Ozdemir or win unanimously. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
I ended up putting Allberg as my 4 weight, and I'm just nervous, man. I think Ozedmir is such a seasoned veteran. He's obviously, like you said, a title challenger, whether it was deserved or not. Because at the time he was only 3-0 in the UFC. Um, Man, he lost to some top end competition, kind of gained his feeding again, beating Ilir Latifi and Alexander Rakic, and then gets finished by Jiri. You know, I think Ozedmir is by far the biggest test Alberg's ever fought. So that makes me a little nervous too. Is like talking about can a guy go the distance? Like we haven't seen Alberg do that. I guess it was a fight in which he was close against Dawoon Jong. You know that almost went the distance, and he has gone. He has one decision win in the UFC, but that's kind of against a low end opponent that he should be getting a win against. If anything, he should have got a finish. Uh, I say it sounds like I have all these negative things against Alberg. He is the better fighter here, in my opinion. I love his output. He has 3 more strikes landed almost per minute than Volkan Ozedmir. I love that output, and I think that might end up getting him the advantage in a decision situation with the judges. Just sheer volume and hopefully damage against Ozedmir. But I think this one's going to open Alberg's eyes a little bit to what the UFC is really about. Because, man, like, yeah, he's got wins. He finished Alonzo Menafield, cool, but like, there's nowhere near competition on this list like Ozedmir. And even the next closest guy, Kennedy Nchukwu, yeah, he finished and knocked out Alberg. So, and I get that was a long time ago, but before I'm like so gung ho on Alberg, like just keep in mind on this show these are picks, not bets. You know, I'll say specifically a difference between a pick and a bet. Like in the fight we were discussing earlier against Min Yang and Diaz, I'll take the under. That's a bet, but I am picking Alberg to win this fight. I am certainly not betting it, especially not at that kind of money, 280. That's almost 3-1 odds against a seasoned UFC veteran that I just don't understand.
Yeah, 100%. And I hear you. Like this could be like this is definitely gonna be Oberg's biggest test and thus far. And Volkanovski can just show up and he can just look, you know, just show levels that there's levels to this. Because he is a vet now with good experience. But that being said, I like Oberg a lot, just the matchup. So I'm feeling strong with him as my 5 weight.
Sounds good. So with that said, that covers Jose's 5 weight and my 4 weight. So that will give us a total 9 confidence points there. That's funny because it feels like the least confident 9 confidence points, but in the end, that's kind of how the nature of this card works. But we'll still have some good picks coming up for you guys. Um, but I'll rotate in here next, even though we have not gotten Jose's 4 weight yet. I'll step in here so we can keep our switch off, and I'll take my 3 weight to the table, and we'll get Jose's 4 weight after that. And for my 3 weight of Saturday morning, I want to say Saturday afternoon so bad, but it's going to be Saturday morning for us, Sunday afternoon their time. I'm going to the main event, and we're going to be going to Piotr Jan here versus Davison Figueiredo, one of my favorite fighters. I love this guy, former champ, of course, against former champ, and this is going to be so interesting at 5 rounds, man. I will say that I got a 3 weight here on Figgy, and he's a plus 250 dog. Somehow Piotr Jan is minus 340. He's over a 3-1 favorite against Figgy, and some part of me understands. I get it. Uh, Jan is the champ at this division, and in all reality, he probably has the speed advantage, specifically in boxing, against Davison. So when it comes to the stand-up game, I would expect Piotr Jan to be a little faster and have the advantage. And it really will come down to whether you can get Jan down on the ground. Some of the fighters that have been able to beat Piotr Jan, like Merab, landed 11 takedowns. Of course, Sean O'Malley is a different situation. He arguably didn't win that fight, but he got the split decision. Aljo, and that was interesting because Aljo lands 2 takedowns, gets the split. That was weird because that was obviously the rematch too from the DQ. So a lot of weird scenarios that Piotr Jan's gone through, but in the end, it does seem to have some sort of a blueprint in order to beat Piotr Jan. You wrestle him and you kind of tire him out, and then and then he loses that extra little edge in the boxing game because he doesn't have that speed once he's gassed out. That's what Figgy's going to have to do here to get this win. And I think at plus 250 that is a fantastic deal. You're getting a guy that's a former champ who knows what it feels like, who knows what it takes to go 25 minutes. I've seen and heard people question Figgy. I'll take Figgy if this is 3 rounds, but not if it's 5. And I guess part of it is just a nod to what Petr Yan's been able to do, because Yan goes to a lot of decisions. Yan has finished some opponents, but he goes to a lot of decisions. So there's no doubt that Yan is going to be ready for that. In fact, Yan has more decision wins than KO wins. So he'll have the cardio necessary. But I just don't see why Davison Figueiredo wouldn't. He's gone the distance with guys like Brandon Moreno. Like, Brandon Moreno's got one of the best fat gas tanks in the UFC. That guy could just keep going. He's like Sean Strickland almost. So there's little concern. I mean, I get that he's had a few three round fights in this division, in this weight class that he's moved up to, in which, maybe some argument might be made that, oh, well, Vera looked good at the end of the fight. Well, kinda, but not really. I thought Figgy was landing really well against Marlon Vera, even in the third round of that fight. So I don't know, man. I'm not convinced. In fact, Figgy landed a knockdown against Vera in that third round of their last fight. So Figgy's showing that he can be strong going into these later rounds. So I'm just not buying that at all. I think there's too much value on Figgy, a former champ who knows what it's going to take. Yeah, he's going to miss some takedown attempts, is what I mean to say. Yes, Petr Yan's takedown defense is above average. It's good. But in the end, I don't think it's going to be good enough. Figgy is just a different animal at this new weight class. It feels like it's the weight class he dang near almost should have been at the whole time. But clearly he still had success being a former champ too. So without any more rambling, that's my 3-weight on Figgy. Loving the underdog spot. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. I love the underdog spot as well. And I actually have Davison Figueiredo as my 3-weight as well. Reason being is I think this is going to be just an extremely close match. I just really couldn't see Davison Figueiredo being my 5 or 4-weight because like I don't think he will dominate Petr Yan to like that, but I also don't think, like, I'm not worried that, like, oh, like Petr Yan may, may actually get him from this and that. Therefore, I want Davison Figueiredo to be my 1 or 2. Like, he's a good middle ground for me, as in, like, both guys' skills technically are pretty similar to each other. Both guys are gonna have good takedowns and takedown defense, as well as I think Davison Figueiredo will pose more of a submission threat than Petr Yan, and on the feet, Petr Yan may be honestly, on the feet, I think it's going to be a really good, fun striking match. I think they're going to throw some wild kicks and spinning moves. To be honest, I think it's going to be fireworks on the feet. And then when it comes to the grappling, I think Petr Yan will do phenomenal wrestling against Davison Figueiredo, and I think Davison Figueiredo as well will probably look for the submissions, just because he does have more submissions on his record than Petr Yan, and he's been able to just put people out, like, just lights out. Like, he submitted Cody Garbrandt, and then the way he put out Joseph Benavidez was insane. And again, like, and maybe because of that, this fight probably will end up going to decision. And if it goes that way, I would still go with Davison Figueiredo, but in this one, I like this fight just a lot. It actually is a hard one for me to judge overall, just because I do think both have similar skill sets. Again, Davison Figueiredo just probably has the slightly better jiu-jitsu, but how they match up too, there's other ways. Like, when I look at how they match up physically, Petr Yan is the taller guy here, but Davison Figueiredo has a 1-inch reach advantage. So even though Davison Figueiredo is slightly shorter, I still think he's gonna get some land some good strikes on Petr Yan's chin. And that being said, like, as you mentioned, Davison Figueiredo looks really good in this weight class, and thus far, I mean, he's looked, if anything, better yeah, for sure, he's looked better in this weight class than when he was with the flyweights. And that being said, like, I have yet to have like that much. I have yet to see moments where I question, whoa, like, did Davis Figueroa make a mistake, or like, oh, here's how he's looking now against, a true bantamweight. And that being said, like, I just think thus far he's just been looking extremely dominant as a bantamweight, and him versus Petr Yan is literally, I think it's really just elite of the elite. You have two former champs going at each other. that being like Peter Yan being the former bantamweight and Davis Figueroa former flyweight. But I definitely can see Davis Figueroa one day being a double champ as well, reaching that status of being a double champ of becoming a bantamweight champion as well. So really close fight, but in the end, I'm going to take Davis and Figueiredo. I think he can. I think this fight may most likely will go to decision, and I'm not worried about that. As you mentioned, Peter Yan has gone to a lot of decisions, and Davis and Figueiredo has shown that he can do it all. He can KO people, he can submit people, and he can just win it unanimously in the fifth, all 5 rounds. So this one may even be a split decision. To be honest, I can see it being a split one. But that being said, really hard for me to judge like how dominant Davis and Figueroa would be, but I am confident with him and I like him as the underdog as well. So he is my three weight.
Sweet, sounds good, man. So, interestingly enough, same weight, same pick from us here. As a quick reminder, we make our picks and weights ahead of time, individually, and then just go over them right before we start the show, so we know what order to go in, and that's it. So that's just a chance there that we both take Figgy with our 3 weights and seem pretty confident that either finish or decision he can get the job done. Although it's not going to be easy, he's definitely got a very tough test. Piotr Jan is never an easy out, but obviously Figgy is just one of the more technical beasts in the game, and this weight class seems to be perfect for him. I have the feeling he's on track to get a future title shot here. So this is definitely one of the steps in that path, and if he gets through it, he's going to win some of us some good money at plus 50, 250, that is, as an underdog. So, yeah, we still have to discuss, though, Jose's 4 weight, and we'll take that away.
So for my 4 weight, this is the women's strawweight bout between Yan Jianan and Tabitha Ricci. Right now, Yan Jianan is the betting favorite at minus 210, while Tabitha Ricci is the betting underdog at plus 162. Historically, I like to go for Tabitha Ricci. I have gone for Tabitha Ricci. She's a good looking prospect in this division, but Yan Jianan, she's already seen like I think more elite competition than Tabitha Ricci. So to me, it's like no question why Jan's the favorite and why she is my 4 weight because just the level of competition she's seen, and she's looked good. And of course, she just lost to Zhang Weili, but that's Zhang Weili, and so no shame in that. And besides that, she has wins over like Jessica Andrade and Mackenzie Dern, Claudia Gadelia, and Caroline Kowalkiewicz, and Angela Hill. So. Which is a similar foe that the similar opponent that Tabitha Ricci has just most recently beat, which is Angela Hill. But Angela Hill, she's just I don't know, like she's good. She's good, but she's 39, been in it. I don't want to say she's a gatekeeper, but I wouldn't see her fighting for the championship anytime soon. 17 and 14 in the UFC is crazy. But I think this is just a good testing ground, like just to kind of see where Tabitha Ricci fits within the top 10. I just don't. I think this might be just a little too much, like a little big of a leap for her. Fighting Yan Jianan. I mean, Yan is probably like again like a couple fights, like a couple wins like away from a title shot again. Where Tabitha Ricci, I don't really see her getting a title shot that soon. But if she were to get one shortly after this one, I just think everyone else in the top of the division is going to be just too much for her. And that being said, like how the stats and how they line up physically, Yan Jianan is also the bigger fighter. She is 5'5". Tabitha Ricci is 5'1". Yan Jianan has a 2-inch reach advantage, and both fighters throw high level of strikes. But Tabitha Ricci, she lands 4.63 significant strikes per minute, but she does absorb 5.3. So I do think Yang Jianan will get the better of her on the feet, and which will lead her to, I think, winning unanimously by decision because Yang Jianan, out of her 18 wins, half of them come via decision. So I think she's going to get the better of Tabitha Ricci on the feet, may knock her out, but if not, most likely win by decision. Where Tabitha Ricci, I think she will have to finish out Yang Jianan to win this fight, but most of her fights also go to decision. So if it goes to decision, I definitely just see Tabitha Ricci losing this as well. Regardless, no matter which way it is, I think the only way she beats Yan again is it has to be almost a finish, which I just don't think will happen. So that being said, I like Yang Jianan in this one, and she is my 4 weight. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
So I'm agreeing with you. I think we're going on a nice little streak here of agreeing on fights and picks. This will be another case of an agreement here. Uh, yeah, Jianan Yan here is just a experienced pick, a veteran pick. I think Tabitha Ricci has a solid, prosperous future in the UFC for sure. I just think she's got a little developing to do, and fights like these against Zhao Nanyan will be those fights that kind of help to develop her. But that doesn't mean she's going to get the win. I just don't think she's got the technical ability. Zhao straight up KO'd Andrade. Like, I still remember that and how impressive it was. And I just don't think Tabitha Ricci has anywhere near the ability to do that. She has a negative striking differential. She just kind of gets beat up on the feet and goes for takedowns, and in all reality, gets wins with those takedowns. But a lot of times it's a decision win. She does have an armbar win against Jessica Penne, former champ, or not even UFC champ, I don't believe. Former title challenger, technically, in the UFC is what Jessica Penne is, but still kind of a bad overall fighter. And yeah, I just don't think Ricci has too much competition, high end competition in her history books yet. And this is by far the biggest test she'll have. It's a tough fight, man. This is a tough fight against more recent title challenger. I mean, she didn't look too like she definitely got beat by Wei Li Zhang, but honestly looked like a close competitor, and I think she's going to be on a track to get that rematch soon. Not to mention she's also got the bigger stature by 4 inches of height and 2 inches of reach. So I do like the stature, height, and weight not weight obviously, height and reach advantage there, and just overall experience. Yan Jianan, she might only be our two weights, and my two weight at least, and Jose's four weight. But honestly, I almost feel more confident in Jianan, just given she's minus 210. It's not like a crazy. Like if you want to bet on Alberg, you're going 280, or if you want to bet on Zhang Minying, you're going 330. Like that's a little more reasonable to bet minus 210 on Yan. So that might be more of a good path to take in terms of making bets here, on a fight we agree on. So yeah, that said, that'll be Jose's four weight and my two weight. Jianan Yan co-main event. That gives us one more fight to discuss for Saturday afternoon, and that will be Carlos Alberg versus. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Kenan Song versus Muslim Salikov. We're gonna make the streak here of just all five main event fights for this Saturday, in which we are discussing. So this leaves, by process of elimination, my one weight and Jose's two weight in contention here. And for this feature fight of the afternoon or morning, wherever you're located for this card, I will be taking Muslim Salikov to beat Kenan Song. And obviously, as my one weight, I'm a little less confident than most picks. I think Muslim Salikov offers a good mix in his game, where he kind of shuffles in takedowns at times, and has a good striking game as well. I was impressed specifically against his win recently against Santiago Ponzinibbio, who I believe is juiced and not even in the UFC anymore, if I'm not mistaken, because he got caught juicing or something like that. I don't want to quite throw too big allegations around, but that guy was definitely not natural from what I understand, and Salikov still got the win. Pretty impressive. He does lose to Randy Brown and Nicholas Dalby. You'd like him to see beat a guy like Nicholas Dalby. Randy Brown's a tough out with his stature in this division. He's fighting Kenan Song. Currently, Song, obviously the underdog at plus 140, and Salikov, I'm favored at minus 180. So a lot better odds than some of the fights we've been discussing tonight, but it's also mainly just a testament to Salikov not really being like a super dangerous guy. He's 2-2 in his last four fights, although those are kind of dogs he's fought. 2-3 in his last five in all reality. But the Leech is a tough out. Nicholas Dalby's always a tough out, and Randy Brown we already talked about. And kind of same goes with Kenan Song. Like he's lost to Alex Morono, Max Griffin, Ian Gary, and Kevin Doucette. Like those are not bad losses at all. Kevin Doucette also recently lost to Brian Battle, so we don't know as much about Kevin Doucette yet. But Ian Gary, obviously, Alex Morono, those are seasoned veterans. Those are good guys. to take losses to when you're looking back. But I don't think Kenan Song has what it takes to beat Salikov on the feet. And of course, he's going to be compromised if he gets taken down. You know, he's not the kind of guy that's going to get you a finish. Kenan Song does have submission wins under his book, actually more than Muslim Salikov. But I'd wager to bet that in a situation where these guys are on the ground, it's not necessarily one guy taking the other down for a submission. I would wager to bet that it's more or less an exhaustive tactic, like one of them is tired and wants a break and wants to just like sit in guard or something for a little bit. I don't know. Could be wrong about that one. I would anticipate this fight to stay on the feet, and in which case, I like Salikov to get the win. Any thoughts, Jose?
Yeah, this one. So I'm gonna agree with you. I'm going with Muslim Salikov as my two weight. Obviously, it's process of elimination, and yeah, I like him more on the feet as well. I actually think Muslim could finish Kenan Song within the 2.5, and if not, if it goes to decision, I feel extremely comfortable with Muslim as well. I think he's just going to get the better end of the exchanges. The only thing that I do question a little bit is Song is younger by 6 years. So as we like, I mean, Steve, like we just saw Steve Payne, John Jones, and we were talking last week how like maybe in that later age of life, there's a difference. And I still think like they were saying that John Jones, I mean Steve Payne was slow because of the body kicks. But I think he was just going to be a little slow regardless, just due to age. And I mean, Muslim hasn't really shown how slow he is. I mean, to some degree, given that some of the opponent, I mean, Santiago Ponzinibbio was up there. He's 38. In Kevin Holland, he got finished by Kevin Holland. Um, uh, my bad. My bad. I opened up the wrong one. He beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, and then he getting finished by Randy Brown and Nicholas Dalby. Him beating Santiago Ponzinibbio was a split decision. Again, Santiago like okay, maybe juicing and he's just up there in age. But that being said, I like Muslim, but I'm just not as confident just because of slightly the age, but that's not the biggest factor, I guess I should say. But it's just what Kenan Song may bring. The one thing is I do think Muslim is more likely to knock out Kenan Song because of Kenan Song gets tagged up a lot on the feet as well. When it comes to significant strikes, he lands 4.57 but absorbs 5.84, whereas Muslim lands 3.32 and absorbs 2.92. So I do think that Kenan Song's going to get tagged up a bit more and get finished by Muslim, or if not, lose unanimously to Muslim. So that being said, I agree with you on Muslim Salikov, but he is my two weight.
All right, sounds good. Well, that'll do us for us here at Moneyline MMA. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. We will, of course, be back as the UFC always is. The UFC streak continues. We continue. Five weights have been hot. Those continue to burn hot for us, and they will continue as we go forward. I believe I'm approaching 7 to 8 correct five weights in a row again. The streak got broken earlier this year, but currently the record streak is about, I believe, 13 or so straight five weights in a row. We know how to win some money. We know how to pick some fights here at Moneyline MMA. That will continue. Just keep in mind, actually, as I say all those things, we're actually going to get a break. There is no fight card on November 30th. Of course, that is the weekend of Thanksgiving. So everybody enjoy time with your family. That Thursday and Friday, hopefully you can take off of work and get a nice long weekend. But with that nice long weekend, there will be no UFC fights. So we will return 2 weeks from today on the 2nd, of course, to discuss the next pay-per-view event, in which is UFC 310. Pantoja will be defending his belt for the first time that I've ever understood it. I'd have to do some research. Maybe with the extra time we'll have, we can do some research on this one to see if there has ever been a UFC debut straight to a title contender, because Kaya Sakura has never fought in the UFC, but he will be challenging Alexander Pantoja in his first UFC fight for the bantamweight, flyweight belt. So we'll discuss that one 2 weeks from today on the 2nd. Enjoy the week off. Have a great Thanksgiving. And until then, take it easy.